Charles Wilbur. Will be 88 in October.
So tell me about your time in the service. So starting off, did you enlist or were you drafted?
That's a long story.
Tell me, I have some time.
Oh, you can't believe it. But anyway, uh, I was drafted in November of '39, real early. There was 50 of us. They put us on a bus and took to Sioux Falls. And if we passed the physical in Sioux Falls, we were in the service. I and another kid didn't pass. He had a poor heart, and I had poor eyes. That's all there was to it. Came back. We didn't come back in a bus. They brought us back in a taxi. And back to Brookings City, Brookings. And we lived about a half mile apart. And so we just called up, one of our folks came and got us and took us home. So we weren't in the Army. Now then, he was going to college. We'd been high school classmates, class of 37. He was going to college and I wasn't. But my mother died that fall. And my dad said, we were north of Brookings. He said, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to keep on farming. So an uncle of mine persuaded my dad to let me go to college. So I started to college in January of 1940, in the start of the winter quarter. Got along all right, had no problem, had to take military and basic, and I knew one of the officers from Volga that was on the staff there, name was John Olson. He just died very recently, and he talked me into taking advanced military. I told him that I was rated 2C, neither one 4F nor 2A or 1A. I was rated 2C because neither fish nor fowl. And Pearl Harbor hadn't come along yet. And he said to me, well, you know, if we ever get into a shooting war, if you're warm, they'll take you. So why don't you go in as an officer and take ROTC? And I did. Graduated, and we were supposed to go in as officers, but the World War II was so tough, they wanted to get everybody qualified or not let them get in. So we had to go to Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia. And that's where I graduated. That's where I told you kind of an odd story. Now, you won't believe this, but this is just part of it. When I got into that class, they picked a few of us to keep our ears and eyes open and see if we could hear anything pro-German or pro-Jap or anti-United States, like the president. They called him a clown. You know, those kind of deals didn't work at all then. You know. Anyhow, I had that deal, and all I had to do was write a letter. If I said I met a friend and really liked him, all I had to mention is a name, but say something complimentary. Then didn't make any difference what I said. They were going to investigate him, just to mention the name. That was the little spy system they had going there. Well, they decided they ought to find out about me. You know, maybe I was pro-German or pro-Jap. So they wrote back to Brookings, 12 different organizations or people. Well, one of them was the draft board. The draft board had reclassified me as 4F, from 2C to 4F. They didn't think I was in there, sir. They said, he lives out on his dad's farm. There I was, 6 weeks into OCS at Fort Benning. And then I was 4F. I didn't know. They had never told me about it. Just one of those deals, you know, that just happened. But I wanted to go in. I didn't want to, I wanted to stay in is what I should have said. They talked to me a long time, and I was a real good rifle shot. In fact, if you felt could look it up, you see I broke the camp record. But so they said, well, we know he can shoot pretty well, you know. He must be shoot real well. He must be able to see pretty well. So they made a little... whatever the word is, excuse for me anyway, and they overlooked my eyes. And, one of the deals, one of the officers said to me, now what would happen right today if you broke your glasses? And I said, I carry an extra pair all the time. Do you have them with you now? And I said, yes. He said, let's see them. So I took them out of my shirt and I handed them and I think that clinched it right there. They just never asked me anything more. And when I came home from the Army, I wanted to stay in the Army. I liked the Army. I had a very good record in the Army.
Why was that? You mean once you came home from serving overseas during the war, you wanted to stay?
Yeah, I was a year and a half over there. And I liked it. And I I don't know where he is now, but anyway, there's a general that I got to know over in Germany. He was a real good little guy, and he ended up taking MacArthur's place in Korea. His name was Matthew Ridgway. And he wasn't a very big man, but he was a good one. And I'd signed a deal that I'd go back. I came home 45 days leave, gave him a special deal to come home, get married, get my wife to be and go back. But she wouldn't go back. And that's why I'm in Miller. I had a degree in education, so I could teach for vocational agriculture, and we couldn't get married, and we could get married, and I could go back, but she wouldn't go with me. And she was an only child, and they lived at Orient, which is 30 miles northwest of here, northeast, northwest. And then another kind of an odd deal that you had that about 70 points would send you home from Europe. You've been over there on a point system, see. But if you had 30 or 40 or 50 points, they wouldn't send you overseas. You had too many points to go overseas. But you had to, and I had 54. I was, again, neither fish nor fowl. I couldn't go back, and I couldn't, if I was over there, I couldn't come home. But
tell me about what you did over during the war.
Well, I was a combat platoon leader, got wounded a couple of times. And I was the 29th. Went all through the war, or after I got there. I was wounded, and I was in the hospital 100 days during the Battle of Bulge. It came right where we were. And so I was in the hospital. I got wounded on the 16th of November, and the Battle of Bulge started the 20th of December.
Tell me about your injury.
It went in, a bullet hit me in the shoulder here, and went clear across my back and hit my backbone and bounced out. The backbone as white as your teeth, too. And they didn't see it right away, but when I got it looked like I just got hit here. I didn't know about the one going out the back. And that was kind of an odd deal. I finally got out of the German and got into Belgium and ended up at Liège, Belgium, in a high school. And the gymnasium was a kind of a receiving area for all of us. And I felt fine, looked fine, but I'd had a broken shoulder. And I waited quite a while because I had worse guys come in. If you ever watch MASH, they take the bad ones first, and I wasn't one of the bad ones. So 2 or 3 days later, they got me up off this stretcher. On one of the odd things again, when I was overseas, my wife mailed to me a real pretty shirt, an officer's shirt. And it was a first-class wool. I can't tell you what it was because I don't know, but it's a beautiful shirt. Well, it was getting kind of cold, and in November 16th, and I knew I'd be sleeping out, and that's tough duty. So I put that shirt on, and that's the only thing that I really wanted. And 3 days later, after I got wounded, they decided they're going to investigate this deal, because I kept telling them I'm all right. I was enjoying sleeping anyway, and because I was pooped. Anyway, I only weighed about 140 pounds those days after running all the time. But anyhow, when they went to take me up, I was stuck to that stretcher, stuck right tight to it. I had 7 layers of clothes on, which is not an unusual amount. They're kind of light stuff. But anyway, that's by the time I got another 7, or maybe that blanket was. Anyway, the nurse said that, when it's through 7 layers of stuff, I was sleeping on a blanket or resting on a blanket. It went clear through the blanket, through the canvas on that stretcher, and there's a spot of blood that big around, about that thick on that floor. For 3 days, I just dripped away, and then so they gave me 3 bottles of plasma, and then they cleaned it out and put me in a cast. But I laid there 3 days, and then the poor little old gal, as a nurse, she'd come in and she'd kneel down beside me and talk, and I'd tell her I was fine, and I was thirsty, and she'd give me a straw deal to drink out of. And I was fine. My right arm was good, and I had no problem at all for anything. And I wasn't hungry. Didn't have to go to the bathroom. Nothing. Just stayed there. And then she was the one that they took a kind of a coil, like a coiled piano wire, and they cleaned that wound. They pushed it through there, and it came out back there. And she was the one that told me she says, this bone is just as white as my teeth, she says. She went back and forth there, and the pain was such, just like I was sitting on this, and she was using hers, and she was trying to clean this out by doing this, and she was right in front of me, and I vomited, went right down her front. Green crap. Terrible smelling stuff, but she was as nice as could be. She just left and came back a little while, and And I said, did you take a shower? Well, kind of one, she said. So I couldn't leave you here. I just leaned against the wall then. It was in the physics lab of the high school where the right off the gymnasium was this lab, and all the gas switches and all that were just like in ours in high school. Same stuff, same make too, and I think made in Germany that we had. Anyway, I just leaned back against that deal, and she came and she apologized, and she was washed and smelled soap and nice and clean. She got rid of all the vomit anyway, and finally I got in the hospital. And I was there all during Christmas and New Year's, and about the middle of February I went back up the front line again. Got wounded again, but nothing very bad that time. Uh, it was right at the end of the war, close to the end of the war, and we surrounded a great big huge forest, I guess it was. And there's some Germans in there that didn't want to give up, soldiers. They threw a grenade at us, and I ducked into kind of a little deflated area, and I had my hands like this, and the grenade went back off gun, and a little chunk of it came in my hand, and it didn't look like much, and it wasn't much, but it was in there. I didn't think it was in there. I didn't think anything was there because I could do like that and it hurt. But they finally took X-ray, and they had a probe in there and get it out, and I couldn't write for a month. The biggest, fattest hand you ever saw. Got infection in it, but it kind of went up like this, but they got it all squared away.
So if you were on the front lines, you had to have seen a lot of your friends and fellow soldiers get hurt or even killed.
Yeah, well, yeah, lots of them. It's kind of a bad deal, but just to give you an idea of how things were now. I wasn't in on the worst of it, so I don't want you to think I'm thinking I was. But this outfit went in the 6th day of June, and I got wounded November 16th, and that's July is 30, August, September, October, 4 months, 120. November is about 150, 60 days. I was a 1,000th, 1,032 casualty in B Company of the 175th Infantry 29th Division. We lost on the average of 6 men. Now casualties mean killed, wounded, or captured. 6 a day. Now they're talking about 2,000 or 3,000 that they've lost over there in this deal in all these years and months and everything, and we lost a third that much in 6 months in one company, one rifle company. We had 20-some thousand casualties in the 29th Division. I think we were the highest or the second highest. There are a lot of them right up there. We're 3rd Division, 1st Division. Some of the armored infantry were high. We were just plain foot soldiers. 29th. And, there's a lot of things that caused tanks that come in on us and just kind of like we'd be in a little town about a half mile across. They just run across, cut out a corner of it, and who was ever in there, they herded back to their town. We had an odd deal happen. I was paying the company. They had to have an officer pay everybody, and they gave you the cash. God help you if you ran short. You had to make it up. And if you ran over, you just stuck it in your pocket. There's no way that you weren't going to live long enough to get it squared away. So I'd just stick it in my pocket, and then we had a little slush fund that we put it in there. And money didn't mean much to us. But anyhow, that was the way it was. I was paying the company one day, and you had to find every man and identify him. You had to see his dog tag so you knew what we were doing. And you know something? While I was doing that, 3 tanks came in and captured 30 or 40 of a platoon. There's 36 in a platoon, but there's about 30 in it then. Captured them all. It was on the northeast corner of this little town that they came in, and just cut them out and herd them away. And we had a Jew in there who was a twin. His name is Goldstein, and he got captured, and the one that wasn't, they're identical twins. And the other Goldstein did not get captured. And you know what he did, the twin did? He took off that night and went east to Germany so he'd be with his brother. It meant that much to him. And I have no idea. I know the Jews were not treated very nicely, and there was no doubt about it. And their dog tags were Goldstein, and they said Jewish right on them, or Hebrew, H. There's no chance that they're going to fool anybody, but he took that. I never did hear about him. When the war was over, or the combat deal was over, I was a first lieutenant then, and they got me to go in military government. It's typical government screw up, typical. I had lived on a farm, then a big farm, and they apparently knew quite a little about me, and they said, we're just what you want to get this food problem, help us with it, so you can talk to farmers and you understand food and processing, and guess what? I was in charge of police and fire. A fireman and a policeman. I never talked to a dirt farmer ever. They were doing a lot of nice harvesting and stuff that fall there, but I never got anything. That was my job. That's what I did. And guess part of the job was we were trying to catch all the criminals that had done bad things. And our immediate boss was a lieutenant colonel who was in the same office with. He could talk to Ike if he wanted to. I never talked to Ike, but I saw him a couple of times, but I never did talk to him about anything. But I talked to Patton for 2 hours at a track meet one time. Very interesting guy, Patton. He's about that much taller than I am. Big, tall, smart man, real smart. He knew all about the track stuff.
Oh, interesting.
He said to me, he slapped a soldier in North Africa. He was the most profane person I've ever seen or heard. He couldn't say yes without swearing about it. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I'm not going to try to quote what he said, except that he called him a dumb SOB and a yellow SOB. And what would you do if you had that SOB in your outfit? Just word after word like that. But nevertheless, I would have done the same thing. I understand battle rattles real well. I know exactly what they're going through. I think I do. I've seen enough of them. But somebody should have taken a little more interest in it. We had one or two kids do the same thing. I don't think they can fake it. They can tell you that they're feeling bad. They can fake that. But I don't think they can fake all the tremors and the tears. I don't think they can. But if they can, they ought to be in acting, not in combat. That's what I thought. Anyway.
So tell me, how did you view the enemy back then, and how do you view them now? How is your
View the enemy?
yeah then
They were
and now?
they were on the other team. The ones we didn't like were the ones that were running the concentration camps. When we ran across those dudes, if they said that they've escaped and the prisoners chased them, we sure hope they caught them because we didn't. But ordinary GIs or German soldiers, unless they try to be smart ass about it. But I ran a prisoner of war camp on the Finnish, 18,000 krauts in there, and that's what we call the prisoners or krauts, or the soldiers. And it was in the spring of the year of 45. It was real wet and muddy. We just treated them like they're GIs. There's no difference. It's just like if we were in the town of Miller and some of the provisions came from Huron, some from Aberdeen, some from Pierre. And we would put 3 or 4 trucks and a man in each truck with a rifle. And they might have 4 or 5 guys riding the back to help load. If we go west, like going west, one of the guys came over to me and said, "Say these Krauts got some friends in Heimler. Can we take some of them over and drop them off on Heimler and pick them up on the way back?" And we'd say, "Sure." Everything was just fine. And the nice part about it was we never had to worry much about any of them escaping. We didn't give a darn if they did, really. War was completely over. But there were some bad guys maybe in there, but I don't know, man. We never found any. But anyhow, they go by the numbers, not necessarily the serial number, but you got 60 men in that barracks. Let's see them. Well, they bring back because we gave good food. They go to Highmore to see their friend and bring him back. That's what I meant to say. So we never, if we had 18,000 we started, probably at 18,200. Because it was just kind of a lackadaisical way of doing it, but the war was over. But they hadn't released them all, and so they were in a camp, and inside that camp was a hospital and so forth. So everything worked fine. I enjoyed it. That's where I met this Matthew Ridgway. He said, "You're doing a good enough job. I'd like to have you here." And we got lots of things. And boy, he made me feel like I should be a general. He was a major general, and They made me a real good deal. I was a first lieutenant. He said, you stay here 3 years and you'll be a major at the end of 3 years. And if you do all right, you do it 3 years more, you'll be a full colonel. I couldn't get my wife Genevieve to go with me, so I didn't go. Never did go back. I wrote to him. I had to send him I sent him a wire. Hard to believe, but it was maybe, I don't know what it was. Anyway, I stayed 3 days in Fort Sheridan, Illinois, waiting to get the actual reply from Ridgway that I was excused. I'd signed a deal that hell and high water wasn't going to keep me from going back. See, I didn't get into the Genevieve deal. I just said I haven't got enough points to. I got more points than they'll accept, and they don't want to pay attention to this order of yours, and I do, and let me know what to do. And he says, whatever. He told me I didn't have to stick around with it. Anyway, I came home and I got discharged. I'll brag a little to you. I really like the Army. I'll tell you something about it. I've thought of many times of what would have happened if I'd have gone back. But there was a nice little gal, first lieutenant, checked me out on this deal. And she said to me, did you go to college? You know what grade points I'm talking about? She said to me, you've got a real good grade pointer. The Army had 5 grades. So if you got perfect, you get 5 points. It was, anyway, just one more. And my grade point was 4.73 out of 5. She said, I've never seen any of this high. There's just only one that I've ever seen that was over 4.5. And mine was 4.65. And his was 4.73. She said, his was 4.73. But he was a lieutenant colonel. What happened to you? She said. I said, I guess I wasn't as good, but I got along fine. The only thing in the service, and an officer, you have to be serving under that man, I don't know, 30 days or 45 days. And if you get up to the number of days and he gets transferred away or gets wounded or killed or something, then you start all over. See? Or if I got wounded or killed. Now, when I got my hand hurt, that I didn't lose any time there, but I was 100 days about in the hospital. The war was about over the time this happened, so I couldn't have pulled a trigger to save my life, so